I have dropped Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I've shelved it, I've put it away, I've stopped playing it. I'm not really interested in continuing. It's one of those games. Unfortunately, I think it's safe to say that the Tomb Raider trilogy did get worse as the games went on. The first game was amazing, Rise of the Tomb Raider was just okay, and now Shadow is just, I guess you could say, a shadow of its former self. A shadow of what came before. It's just the same thing, but not quite as good. It's kind of disappointing because a lot of what there are still quite a few things that I still enjoy about Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It feels like they tried to incorporate new mechanics and put more of an emphasis on puzzle solving. Like, it wasn't completely unbearably awful or anything like that, but the game really does feel like it wasn't given enough time to flesh everything out, to make that sense of discovery worthwhile, to really keep the pace going. It's really weird, surviving a plane crash, coming across a village, doing some stuff, coming across another village, and just having it feel like this is all supposed to mean something, and then it really not. I think it really came to me when I was like pulling a lever just randomly in just another random cave, and just another random temple, just in this Peruvian jungle, right? I I realize that this is supposed to be the end of a trilogy. This is supposed to be the resolution to Lara Croft becoming a Tomb Raider, the legendary Tomb Raider, and I don't really see it. I kind of felt this way about Rise as well, but with Shadow, it feels as if everything the developers wanted to accomplish, they accomplished in the first game. Like, nothing these sequels have done really deviate themselves at all from the original in any meaningful capacity. Like, the original had all these great character moments, all this great, mechanics, features, level design, spectacular, right? Like, I have issues with the original, like, in its story and, like, some of its characters, right? Like, I've criticized some aspects of it, but I think overall, the original was one of the best third-person shooters of the last decade, or, like, one of the best Uncharted, like, cinematic sort of survival platforming games of that decade, right? Like, I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was really well executed. I thought it had lots of great mechanics, lots of great reasons to come back to it. Something that, like, I think anyone can enjoy and appreciate. Like, I loved the original Tomb Raider, like, surprisingly so. And of course, the sequels just haven't delivered. Like, it's a lot like Kingdom Hearts in that respect. The drop off in quality is probably not as severe as with Kingdom Hearts, but I think overall, they can be compared in the same way. Like, it's the third party curse. Like, it's the trilogy. Like, they put a lot of money into this first game, right? That's really well received and really popular among its audience. And then they can't really grow or innovate it because they're not really fundamentally creative or passionate developers. So they just sort of rehash what came before. And like, it's really sad to see that I don't think we're going to see more of this reboot Lara Croft. I really don't. I think this is going to be it, and they're just going to reboot it again in a couple of years. Maybe make it darker and edgier. Maybe make her a lesbian. I don't know. I personally think that this trilogy, it needed more of a structure. Like, it needed more of a character arc for Lara. In the first game, I already felt like she became the Tomb Raider. I don't understand why these developers kept pushing this angle that, like, oh, Lara's the Tomb Raider. She's becoming more. She's becoming the Tomb Raider. Like, this is about how her journey begins, and it doesn't really feel that way. It's just Lara going on random ass adventures that vaguely involve her father and this evil corporation / religious cult. I can't seem to decide on what these people are. I don't. It could have been really interesting. It really could have, and parts of it really is. There were parts of Shadow that I really really enjoyed. Lara going around being like a normal person, like I talked about this. Her going around just talking to random NPCs is surprisingly compelling. You know what I mean? Like there are moments that really really pull you in, and it really does feel like the developers had a lot of ideas for where they wanted the story to go, but unfortunately, I don't know whether it was time or budget or resources or just unwilling to do something completely different. It just there's not a whole lot there. It's and it felt like each successive game just stripped away a lot of the things that made the original special, like the brutality, the Lara's ingenuity. Like I feel like these sequels don't quite emphasize that enough. Like it focuses, I don't know, like uh, it introduces all these NPCs that are sort of just they sort of just toss aside for no reason. Uh, it's not handled well. It doesn't lead to a compelling story or interesting game the way the original did. You know what I mean? Like the original wasn't great at storytelling. I think that was my big complaint about the original. Actually, was the story, but I think it gave you a reason to sort of be going around and adventuring. You know what I mean? Like you were surviving this island with all these crazy people, and you were like not the sole survivor, but you had a bunch of other people who you were all working with to sort of do what you could to sort of survive. You know what I mean? And lots of them get killed off. I think most of them actually. And a lot of these characters are I don't know, like nothing that happened in the first two games seems to matter in this. Like you have one character, Jonah, that's in all of them, but other than that, it's just like it doesn't feel like a coherent trilogy. Like you don't learn more about the characters, you don't know more about Lara's background. You don't honestly like how many times do they have to emphasize that Lara's dad is fucking dead? Like I think we see like his death scene like played out like three different ways across the entire trilogy. Like I think you see what happens afterward in the first game, or like you see like what immediately happened in like the aftermath in the second game, and now you see it actually happen in the third. Like it just come on, man. We know her parents are fucking dead. I they could have made that interesting. They're really talented people. Like I think they had it in them to make a really good all-around trilogy, but they needed to make something completely new, like from the ground up, like sort of a. They sort of did this with Rise, right? Where they sort of had this idea where like, okay, you're in a snowy mountain, okay, and now you have to like do things to sort of survive the cold, and they sort of do that at the beginning, and then they sort of drop it. Like I think there's like some more ice related puzzles in that one. Like it felt a little bit different than what happened in the original, right? But it did feel kind of samey after a while, and I think Shadow is like that but worse. I was when I was playing Shadow, I was surprised. The combat was as good as ever, but now there was a lot less of it. It seemed more focused on these crazy elaborate puzzles, which were actually not that bad, but I don't know, it felt weirdly paced. I was just like, why am I doing this? I I did get bored of it, which is really, I'm really, really saddened to say. I was really hoping that it would turn out to be, impress me in some fashion. All around, no. Unfortunately, it's like a 6 out of 10 game. Like, it's not bad the way, like, Uncharted is bad. Like, at least Shadow of the Tomb Raider is fun to play to, like, a certain extent. Like, I didn't hate it, but like when I see a decline in the series this severe, right? A series that I used to enjoy. Like I am going to drop it. Like that's just what I do. Like if the game's not as good as a previous entry in the series, like I'm just why would I continue playing it? Like well, it's not even like the decline in quality. It's just more like it's the same thing but worse. Like it was like that from the beginning, since the second game, and now with this one. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know if there was a way that they could have fixed it or something they could have improved on. But personally, I think Shadow of the Tomb Raider is a bit of a disappointment. Still better than the Uncharted games for sure. Like I still enjoyed my time with Shadow of the Tomb Raider more than I think any of the other Uncharted games. Oh, but there is for the first time. I will say this. I think for the first time we have reached the point where Tomb Raider has done something a little bit worse than Uncharted, and that is the chase sequences. I don't think Tomb Raider has ever done a chase sequence before, at least not in the reboot trilogy. But there is a segment where you're sort of running from these guys, and you're pushing past these townspeople. It's terrible. It's legit awful. Like legit one of the worst chase sequences I've ever played in my life. Completely pointless, and people act like nothing happened afterward. It's really weird and completely out of place. Really should have been cut out of the entire game, out of the game entirely. I feel like it was just awful, just pure awful. And I think Uncharted handles that sort of thing a lot better. I was thinking back to like the Uncharted 3 segment where like your kid Drake running away, and I was just like, yeah, you know what, that's better than this. And that's the first time I've said Uncharted did anything better than Tomb Raider in general. And then you have like the supernatural enemies that sort of come out of nowhere with like no real build up, unlike literally every other game in this, every other like story in this genre. They don't build them up. They're not interesting. They're not scary. It's I don't know, man. Like the original did so well with that. I don't understand why there was such a severe drop in quality, like in this regard, like in not just storytelling, but in like gameplay design and just level design. Maybe not art design. There are like some pretty gorgeous sequences in this game. Well, I think the original had more variety. Like the original really had a lot going for it overall, and it just. I am personally. What could the game have done better? I think that they could have done. They had this idea of incorporating NPCs into the overworld, right? To give you side quests and to like make the world feel more lived in and stuff like that, and like make you feel more involved in the plot. You know what I mean? You have those people. My idea, like, I don't know, like, make the game more open-ended. Like, make it more, make there be like lots of different paths. Make it be like a real hunt to the treasure rather than like just you going along this linear set path. Which is really straightforward and easy to figure out. Really, make it more of like an exploration sort of thing, where like Trinity is hunting down the same thing you are, and you sort of have to like piece together all the clues you can find. I was thinking while playing this, like, wow, I really these hieroglyphic things, these monuments. If you miss a single one of these, you're not going to be able to translate these ruins, which could help you discover more clues if you need them. Like, there are things they could have done, right, to really make this, really make these towns feel important, to make them feel like relevant, to make them feel like interesting. Instead, you're just sort of going from like place to place to place with no real break. I was thinking like survival mechanics. Yeah. The game has this weird sort of idea. It sort of presents itself as like a survival game. Like it's sort of like, oh man, you can hunt animals. There's no reason to. You can get some materials from them, but it's not really pointless. So imagine if you actually did, like in Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, have to survive out in the jungle and actually have to like eat things to stay alive and like stay out there for prolonged periods and like get some sleep if necessary and like heal up. Like deal with like poisonous creatures. I was surprised at the lack of animals in this. You're in the middle of a jungle, and the only thing that comes after you are fucking jaguars, a couple of jaguars, who for some reason don't kill you when they have every opportunity to. Which is again an example of just plot contrivances. Like you don't get the impression that Lara is surviving due to her like own skill and ingenuity. She lives because of convenience. You know what I mean? She lives because the plot like demands her to live. Like, oh, the jaguar just doesn't kill her, even though it could like 5-6 different times. Like, there are so many positions. You don't fuck around with these big ass jungle cats, okay? Like, Lara is like tiny. She wouldn't be able to fight those things off with her bare hands, but somehow she manages it. And it's not cool or badass. It's just lame. Like, it's just again, like the animal fights could have been more interesting. I think Rise of the Tomb Raider sort of had this problem too. Like, like you fight a bear at the beginning of that one, and then you don't need to kill an animal again for the rest of the game. It's just there are so many opportunities here, and the sad thing is, like, you can tell the developers did put a lot of effort into this. Like, for example, like you have this ability where you can slather mud over every square inch of your body to blend into the environment and to stealth kill more easily. Like, that's really interesting, and it's really convincing too. The way she's animated and the way she like goes. The way she hides herself in the bushes, like, it's badass as fuck. It just they needed more stuff like that. Like, they really needed to just take this idea, like really do great things with it. And unfortunately, I think they didn't manage it. I think it's a little bit too. It stays a little bit too true to what's come before. I don't think they evolved enough. The NPC and the NPCs in the community are more fleshed out, but it's still not good. It's still not interesting. I personally just I'm more disappointed than like angry. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's awful. Like I said, it's probably a 6, 7 out of 10 game. Like, if I hadn't like been such a big fan of the original, I probably wouldn't be so angry at this. I mean, I wouldn't have picked this up for one thing. But it just goes to show you that I don't think these developers should be trying to milk games like this. Like, I think they needed to move on to other things. I think they need to work on other projects. I think they need to come up with new concepts and new ideas, and maybe just come back to Tomb Raider when they actually have something new to make. Like, the reboot trilogy did not need to happen. Everything Lara needed to go through for a successful reboot happened in the first game. From then on, it should have been like coming up with new ideas, new settings, more concepts, more things you could do. Like really what they decided to go with is just more of the same, and that's just not what we wanted to see.